Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Maureen Kozicki. And in 2014, Maureen's world changed with an ovarian cancer diagnosis. A longtime yoga and meditation teacher, she struggled to find her own voice amid countless right ways to heal and toxic positivity. Determined to chart her own path, she emerged with a passion for helping others do the same. Today, Maureen is going to share her journey from diagnosis to life beyond treatment, encouraging others to embrace healing and wellness their way. As an advocate, she volunteers with the Michigan Ovarian Cancer Alliance and its SPEAK program, which is survivors promoting early awareness and knowledge. Also raising awareness about ovarian cancer symptoms and risk factors. She also participates in Survivors Teaching Students, a national program of the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance, educating future healthcare professionals to improve early detection and patient outcomes. Her message is simple. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to healing. Hashtag do it your way. So welcome to the show, Maureen.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. I just love that you started this podcast because it speaks to my heart 100%. The more stories we get out there, the more people can understand how different everybody's path is and hopefully reduce fear if it happens to you, that you just can do it your way and there's always hope.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I love when people send me bios because, we talked last week, but when I get a bio and see like all of the accolades and all of the stuff, it's like, oh, there's just so much to dive into here. And I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too.
All right. So take us back to 2014, Maureen. What was your life? I know you were like this yoga instructor and very into health and, mindset and everything and getting this diagnosis. Like we learn, hey, if your mindset is in the right place and, and having all that, get rid of all that negativity, like that's a great deterrent to cancer. So take us on that journey a little bit when you found out.
Right. So actually, my experience begins in December of 2013. I was experiencing a severe bout of the flu, and now I was a very healthy person, like you just mentioned, yoga, diet, meditation, all this. So getting the flu is very unusual for me. I had extremely high fever. I was in bed for like a week. I did recover from the flu, but I experienced back pain, like right after that. And I'm not a back pain person, I am now, but I mean, back then I was not. So I just thought, well, of course I was in bed for a week, my back hurts. So I did all the yoga and stretching, all the things that I would typically address somebody else's pain with, and nothing helped. It kept increasing. So I thought, well, maybe I just need to take a break. Maybe I didn't allow myself enough rest and time away from my regular routine. So I stopped teaching yoga and I did things like different types of massage therapy. And I remember one massage person said, my gosh, your back is as tight as a competitive athlete. So that's not my story. Like I'm not a competitive athlete. I do a little yoga, So, so things
Yoga's like supposed to make all of that not be tight, right?
Right. Exactly. So true. So, things weren't adding up, but I was still, maybe it just needs time. So in February of 2014, so the flu was December, back pain January, and then in February, I went out on Valentine's Day and I ate a little bit differently. So my typical diet at that point literally was an anti-cancer diet. And the reason I was eating that way is because I suffered from endometriosis. Ever since puberty, every month I had severe symptoms with endometriosis. So prior to 47 years of age, I had had 3 different surgeries. One was a diagnostic surgery for endometriosis, and the other 2 were to treat the endometriosis because I was trying to get pregnant and wasn't being, successful with that. So I did have a son, by the way. So that was great.
Okay.
But so here I am eating this way to minimize the effects of endometriosis. And it worked. I still had this pain and bloating and stuff like that every month, but I could manage it. So I thought, well, I go out for Valentine's Day, I eat all this, steak and potatoes and red wine, and went to a movie, and I had buttered popcorn and goobers. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
I know, I was really outside of my diet, but I was really having fun. So I said, of course, I feel like this the next day. Of course, I had this bloating and this abdominal pain. Look what I did the day before. So I went back to this really strict way. Nothing helped. That's very unusual. Up to that point in my life, I had experienced being able to affect my body by changing my diet. Like, it was absolutely always my experience. Like, if it didn't happen right away, I just did tweak something else and I could help my body. So nothing was helping. So now I've got back pain. I've got this bloating that's not going away. Even though bloating is familiar to me, the ebb and flow of it was gone. So with endometriosis, it would hit a peak and then it would go away and so on every month. And here it was just there all the time. So I reached out in February via the patient portal to my gynecologist. And she's like, oh, it's probably endometrioma. You know, you have your regular appointment in a couple of weeks. Just keep that. Okay, by the time I get to this appointment, I'm in so much pain. I'm literally only wearing maternity leggings.
Oh my
I
gosh.
could not handle anything. It was so much pain. So I go to the appointment. She's like, oh, I feel something. And I'm like, yeah, I do too. You know, oh, right. So she's like, go get some blood work and come back tomorrow for an internal ultrasound. So, okay, you know, obviously something's very wrong. We're going to get to the bottom of it. She still thinks it's this endometrioma, which is like a fluid-filled, non-cancerous cyst.
Mm-hmm.
That's what an endometrioma is. So where nobody is saying cancer. So I go to this internal ultrasound. It was extremely painful, but the exam was very brief. And I remember that. I remember thinking, you know, that's a weird vibe. They can't say anything.
Right.
But I knew
Like,
that,
oh, they found it
they
and
saw something.
we don't need any more, right?
Exactly. They
Okay.
weren't looking. It was right there. So I'm waddling back to my car and my cell phone rings and it's my gynecologist. So before I even got back to my car, she's calling me. And so that's not a good sign. So she's like, hey, you know, the ultrasound showed you've got a mass on your left ovary. Your right ovary is enlarged. And I'm giving you the name to the best surgeon around. Call him when you get home. Okay.
Wow,
All
that
right.
was
We're on
fast.
top of it. Yeah. So I get home and I call this number. And that's when I realize it was a gynecologist, oncologist.
Mm.
So that's when it started getting real. So that's end of February. They scheduled the surgery before I even met with the gynecologist, oncologist. So there must have been some kind of relationship between my gynecologist and the surgeon that she was able to say, no, just go ahead and schedule her. So I didn't meet the gynecologist oncologist until the day before my surgery.
Oh my gosh. Wasn't
Yeah.
like you were even given much of an opportunity to go, maybe I should get a second opinion.
Oh, I didn't at that point. I was in so much pain. I knew something inside of me was trying to kill me. I mean, I knew it. I felt it for sure. So I was okay having the surgery
Okay.
for certain. That was never a doubt for me because of what I was experiencing physically.
Right.
But still, nobody's saying cancer. They're still thinking it's related to my endometriosis because I had such a severe case of it for, you know, since puberty, for decades. So it wasn't until after I woke up from surgery that I heard the words cancer.
Did
And
you
then it
even know
was,
what they were going to do? Did they do a total hysterectomy or just a oophorectomy or what did they do?
they did a total hysterectomy and then some. So I did have that conversation. I'm a very analytical person. So even though I was in a lot of pain and I was suffering, I had like a sheet of paper with questions, you know, when I met the oncologist the day before my surgery. So I knew what he was going to do and I knew what he would do if he found cancer. And I did ask him that. And I had done all my research on robotic surgery and how many had he done and all that, you know, so I was very confident in his experience. And I will say this, that for ovarian cancer, that's one of the better things you can do for a positive outcome is be referred to a gynecologist, oncologist right away before anything. So anyway, so he had the surgery. I found out I had ovarian cancer. He thought it was stage 3, but the pathology came back stage 2, which is really rare for ovarian cancer. It's usually diagnosed at the later stages. So who's
Well, you were having so many symptoms. A lot of times people don't even have symptoms of ovarian cancer till it's too late.
Exactly. So, you know, there's silver linings for sure. But, you know, being the problem solver that I am, you know, I was really scared and I wanted to find the right way through. And I didn't know anything really about ovarian cancer other than it was known as the silent killer. And I knew Gilda Radner died from it. That's what I knew. Like, okay. So then I read more because that's what I do. So then I found out it has this really high mortality rate. So for ovarian cancer, the mortality rate is 65%. So that means out of 100 women, 65 are expected to die. to put that
Probably
in
mostly
perspective.
because it's the silent killer.
Right. Well, there's a lot of different reasons. I mean, yes, it's usually diagnosed at a late stage, but even at earlier stages, it has a very high recurrence rate.
Yeah.
And even after treatment, yeah, even after treatment, sometimes it just comes back. It's really like many things, they don't really know, right?
Most
So
things about cancer, they don't really
they
know.
don't, and
Yeah.
it was such a surprise to me. Like I expected to be like, oh, here's a targeted therapy, I really expected that kind of choice, and there just really wasn't one. I did get 3 different second opinions, and there just really wasn't a clear path forward. So I was really desperate for hope. And I ended up finding it in books. So there's 2 books that were really significant to me. One is called Radical Remission by Kelly Turner.
Great
And
book.
her book, yeah, every chapter, somebody different cancer, different path through. And that like really made me relax that I didn't have to find the one right way. It really helped show me that there isn't one and that it's okay. There's hope in all of it. So that was significant for me. And then this other book is called Healing into Life and Death by Stephen Levine. But I don't even think that one's in print anymore. I think he wrote that back in the 80s or 90s. And but what was nice about that book is him and his wife were meditation teachers, and they worked with people that were given a terminal diagnosis. So these people were expected to die of whatever disease they were experiencing. And so they worked with them in a spiritual healing kind of capacity. And what they discovered is that often when a person healed spiritually, their physical body would heal, but often they would heal spiritually and their body wouldn't heal. And so it really, like I'm that duality kind of thinking. Like I believed I could heal, but I also believed I could die from this deadly disease, and so this book gave me a way to heal in a way that was in my control. So healing physically, I didn't believe was 100% in my control, but healing spiritually, I believed was, especially after reading the book and the things that they had written about in that book. So those 2 books were really significant for me to begin this, I do not like the word journey. It just sounds
Right. I
like
don't
an
like the word
adventure. It's
survivor,
like
so we're
hellish
good.
experience. Like, can we say that?
Yeah.
It's a journey. So no, it's whatever word you want to use. It's just not a good one for me. So it was a very difficult time, and I received a lot of love and support. I mean, the yoga community came through, my family and friends. I had a lot of love. I had 2 dogs. My son was great. I had a lot of love and support, but there was also this ubiquitous notion that I should not express anything negative. That if I talked about my fear and if I talked about my grief and my sadness, my confusion, that I would make myself sicker. And that was very difficult for me to accept when somebody responded that way. And so part of why I tell my story is because I'm living proof that you can have negative thoughts and express them and still heal. So I feel like this toxic positivity world is part of the way I experienced it was that it seemed to have this like everything's mutually exclusive. Like, Maureen, you either have hope or you're afraid. Which is it? Either you're going to think positively and heal, or you're going to think negatively and you're going to bring your cancer back. And my experience was I could feel all of it. Just because I was afraid did not mean I was without hope. And just because I was really sad didn't mean that I didn't also have a lot of gratitude. So I just want there to be room for it all, because there actually is room for it all, right? There really is. It's just we get a little bit afraid or uncomfortable. And it's sort of like the persistent story is that, oh, she never complained and she was always smiling. And that's fine if that's absolutely your authentic way of being.
Right.
Great. But also, if what you're really feeling inside is that you're afraid and you're sad and you're scared, please give yourself, permission to find a way to express your truth, even if it's to yourself in the shower. Like, just allow that truth to come out. You're not going to make yourself sicker.
Okay.
So
I want to hang on. I want to dive into this a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, I believe in both and instead of either or.
Yeah.
Because 2 things can be true at the same time that could be on opposite sides.
100%.
And secondly, and we mentioned it in your bio, and I think this is what you're alluding to. I want to dive into a little bit about toxic positivity.
Okay.
Because I am by nature, I'm a very positive person. That is who I am authentically.
Okay.
I can maybe move into the toxic positivity mode a little bit, trying to like happy myself out of a bad mood kind of thing. But in general, I'm a very positive person and I like to look on the bright side of things. But toxic positivity is kind of a new buzz term that has come out a little bit more recently. So can you just dive in and share a little bit about like the meaning of that and why it can be toxic?
Sure. I mean, maybe we experience it differently, right? So I can speak to what my experience of toxic positivity is. And for me, it's when there's the pressure to be a certain way, when how I'm really feeling is not validated or accepted as okay. And that what's put upon me is the only okay thing for you, Maureen, is to smile, be happy. You're going to make it, so that there's no room for my reality, which is it's all there. So I think the best thing that we can do if we're trying to, you know, not be toxically positive, to somebody, is just to always remember it's about them. Like if you're there to support somebody, it's about them. So to listen and ask them how are they really feeling and validate it. So if they say, I don't know, I'm fine, I guess. Well, you're going through such a lot. I'm so sorry, that you're going through that. How are you sleeping? Start with some more specific questions so you can kind of pull out how they're really experiencing things, because sometimes we get in the habit of being okay so that everybody around us is comfortable. And that can be not such a great thing for yourself either. And it's a habit that's difficult to recognize because it feels like part of our personality. And so if we want to help somebody through that, one way is to ask, well, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? What's your pain level? Try to get some specific answers. And then it becomes a conversation about what they're really experiencing instead of maybe the default, which is I'm fine, everything's fine. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, let's make room for authentically what's really going on. And if what's really going on is I am only comfortable being positive and I'm only comfortable thinking about I'm going to heal, I'm all for that because that's your authentic place. And if my authentic place is, yeah, I know I might heal, but I'm so scared to die. Like I don't want to die for all the reasons, and I need to be able to express that. I need that to be okay too. I want there to be room for all of it. So it's just about, not putting expectations on what we think other people should think or feel, either direction.
So I think what you're getting to is toxic positivity is something that is in some ways thrust upon somebody else. Like you need to be positive, you need to think, happy thoughts, good thoughts, and it's more somebody is thrusting toxic positivity on you versus, hey, I want to be positive. I want to think positive. I want to get through this.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. You should always meet, my opinion is you should always meet somebody where they are. So, I've had friends that they're like, look, I need you, Maureen, to visualize me being 80 years old. Got it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell that person, well, what about the brain surgery you just had? No, when I'm serious, like seriously, I tried my best to meet people where they are, because that's what it's really all about, is giving yourself permission and giving other people permission to feel what they're really feeling. And because then we become fully seen and validated, and that in and of itself is very healing, right? That's a very healing exchange between two people, versus if I say, oh my God, I am so scared, I have treatment again and I'm already in pain, and somebody to say to me, don't think like that. Don't think like that. You're going to make yourself sicker. You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine, because they were uncomfortable. So it's like, does that make sense? Am I
absolutely? Yeah. And it is, honestly, it's that in some ways that is truly a gift when you have people in your life who meet you where you are, because I think the default is, and it is truly my default, is I want to make people feel better. I want to lift people up, and and I'm still learning this even 2 years, later, I'm still learning about being in the muck with people, right, when they are in the muck and they don't want somebody to help them feel better. They just want to feel it, and being comfortable staying there with them, because it's a very uncomfortable place to be. And most people don't want to go there. They're just like, all right, I'm out, or feel better. And, and they're gone. And so to be able to just sit with somebody in those dark times and not try and get them to feel better, but let them get it out. Like, those are truly gifted people, in my opinion, because there aren't that many of them.
I do think we can learn. Brené Brown has a great video on empathy. It's a short video. You can find it on YouTube. It's like animated thing. It's really, really, really helpful to visualize the two different characters that are trying to help somebody who's sad. And one is empathetic and one is like handing them a sandwich or something like this,
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, yes. It's so great. So I think we can all do better. I mean, I'm not perfect. I say some silly things sometimes to people because it is human nature to want to make our loved ones feel better. Mm-hmm. So not to beat yourself up over it. We just all have to keep trying to do the best that we absolutely can. But I do think it is more common for us to move away from discomfort than it is to not only help somebody else sit with, their discomfort, but to be okay with ourselves being uncomfortable. We're just not really taught that, so to be gentle with ourselves and others as we try to be better, support for ourselves and the people around us, for sure.
Well, and then on the other side, then you have the patient, or, for lack of a better term, who maybe doesn't want the other person to feel uncomfortable, or maybe, doesn't want to feel like a burden, or, vent about feeling crappy. And they're just going to say, I'm fine, everything is great, because maybe that person doesn't really want to know how you're feeling, or you don't want to make them uncomfortable or be a burden or something like that. So I think you kind of get it on both sides.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that's where the more direct questions can be helpful. So if I ask somebody, well, how are you doing today? And they're like, I'm fine. Did you sleep well last night? No, I slept a crap. Oh, okay. Let's talk about that. What was on your mind? That kind of thing. So, but always let them lead, so that if I'm asking somebody a direct question and they absolutely do not have the bandwidth to answer any of my questions, I'm not going to keep asking questions. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really something I think that's worth practicing is paying more attention to what you're observing and hearing from the other person than how we're feeling or trying to be helpful, or, because it is from a good place. Often it is from a really heartfelt place that you want to help somebody feel better. That's why you're saying, but look, Maureen, you're going to be fine. You're so strong, and la, la, la. And that's great, but I need you to validate first. So, if I'm expressing fear, and like after I went through treatment, back pain became a big fear of mine. Anytime I had back pain, I was like, oh my God, it's back, because that was what the first symptom I had. Mm-hmm. And I needed people to understand that fear was very valid. And just to say, makes sense you feel afraid, because that was the first thing, just say that, and then say to me, let's call the doctor and see what we can do to make sure your anxiety, maybe a blood test or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, then help me through the problem solving. But if we jump to problem solving and perspective shifting, I feel dismissed and invalidated and isolated, disconnected, and alone with what I'm really feeling. So yes, always allowing that person to feel what they're feeling, validate it first, and then you can offer problem solving or perspective. And even then it may or may not be received. You have to pay attention.
Yeah. And this isn't related to cancer, but I have family members who experience anxiety, mm-hmm. and my daughter's one of them. And we were having a conversation one day, and she said that, like, what helps her the most, especially with her boyfriend, when she's in the middle of an episode, mm-hmm. is for him to say, do you want to be heard or helped?
Nice. I love that.
And that is because our nature is to want to help people. And sometimes people don't want it fixed. They don't want it helped. They just want to be heard. They just want to get it out. And that has become such a powerful statement, because my husband deals with anxiety periodically too. And it's just so great, because I can just come in and say, hey, do you want to be helped or do you want to be heard? Great. And 90% of the time, he just wants to be heard.
Exactly.
And you can like put that in any diagnosis, any kind of issue, something like that, because
Right.
our first inclination is to want to fix things. And a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
times people just want to be able to get out how they're feeling. And then sometimes talking it out fixes the problem in and of itself. And then they don't need anything else. So I love
Right.
that statement. Do you want to be heard or do you want to be helped?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not to be afraid of fear, because often to your point, when we express anything, it diminishes its power.
Mhm.
If we keep it inside, it has a lot more power to ruin our day or whatever you want to talk about, but the more we can acknowledge it ourselves and maybe share it with somebody else, to your example right there, sometimes that's all that's needed to just lighten things up a little bit. And you haven't asked somebody to stop feeling how they're feeling. You know what I mean? You're just absolutely there in loving, kind presence. And that's fantastic. See how good you are at that?
I'm getting better. I still want to help, but but stopping myself and remembering that and asking the question first, it's like a pattern interrupt as
Yeah.
well. And I can
Hmm.
just step back. And, I interviewed someone a few weeks ago and I loved what she said. She had so many people who wanted to help and people who wanted to deliver meals and, and all those things. And she said that sometimes she wasn't up to having company. And,
Right.
and she really asked people if, she loved getting meals. She was very grateful for that. But a lot of times she said, can you just leave it on the porch? Like I'm not in a space to have company and to, I'm not up to entertaining. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I love what you said about let the person guide it.
Yeah,
Let,
let them lead.
follow
Hmm.
their lead and not try and push things on them, because they're the one going through it and we need to be mindful and respectful of what they're going through and what they're feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And to realize that everybody is different, and that was a shock for me too, because I had heard all these stories about women that would go through chemotherapy and then they go right back to work in their three-piece business suit. And then they go to the gym, they'd come home and make dinner, boop, boop, boop. And I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. And it flattened me. Like it flattened me. The first treatment, and then it was a cumulative effect all the way to the end. And so I didn't snap. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. So to just be respectful of what somebody's experiencing and not try to remember not to think that, oh, somebody else I saw go through cancer, went through with flying colors, so to speak. Not that anybody does that, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Like maybe
Or at
they
least put on
didn't
a brave
lose their,
face.
yeah,
Yeah.
they did that. So that's what you'll do. And it's just not the case. I mean, every chemotherapy is different. Every body is different. Treatment protocols are different. So to let people, be. I remember the fatigue was alarming. And I also was very fatigued sometimes with conversation and company. So yeah,
So I love,
it's
like we said in the bio, hashtag do it your way.
always, always. I just
Yes.
want to, that's definitely my message is like, you haven't done anything wrong. Your choices are not wrong. Like it's okay to be you, whatever that is,
I love that.
100%.
I love that. And so you have gotten to the point like you speak out about this now. You're very much an advocate. You're very involved with other organizations and stuff. And kind of how did your experience going through cancer, going through treatment turn into, this advocacy and this helping others? Like what was the, I won't say turning point, but where did you come to, hey, I want to do this and help others?
Right. So actually, I wanted to help right away and I couldn't. So I experienced brain dysfunction from chemotherapy. And I remember going on to the ovarian cancer website where you would fill out the form to volunteer, and I couldn't fill out the form. I don't even know how to explain that so that people understand it. All I know is
Chemo brain.
now, after I've healed, I can do things like that, but I couldn't then. And
Hey, chemo brain is a real thing, and I don't think it's been researched enough. But I've
hasn't
talked to
been
so many people who have experienced it in different ways that it's
exactly.
not just a one like, hey, this is exactly what it's going to be like, and it can
Right.
continue on
Yeah.
like perpetually even after treatment's done.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been 10 years, and I would say the last 2 years have been the 2 years where I feel the significant shift in healing my brain.
Wow.
And so I had and I didn't even know that that's what I was experiencing. I mean, they kind of explained chemo brain as like the brain fog, or you might lose a little bit of focus, but I had some diminished executive brain function. So like my problem solving and ability to understand consequences, and my emotions were all over the place. And it was just very, very different. You know, a lot of people experienced me as very different than before cancer. And I really didn't start to heal fully until I addressed what was going on with my brain. And yeah, so that was a big part of why I didn't get involved earlier, is because I couldn't get my presence back, like to be able to talk to you, to be able to stand up in front of people and say, here's my story that I figured out how to say in 5 minutes instead of 3 hours, you know, and rambling and all over the place, right? So I always wanted to help from day one. The
Okay.
groups that I volunteer for were very kind. They dropped off a little tote bag full of stuff. And I remember not only liking it at the time when I was going through treatment, but after treatment, they had a really informative pamphlet in there. And that's how I found some after chemotherapy, like exercise programs. They had massage programs, but I would never have known about that if they hadn't dropped off that information.
Wow.
So that was extremely helpful to me, because I wanted to get back to building strength in my body, and I had lymphedema from lymph nodes being taken out, stuff like that, and I wanted help with all that. So yeah, that I'm very happy to volunteer for them. They're a great organization. I love the programs that I'm involved in, and of course, there's other ways to volunteer for them as well. But these are the two programs that I joined about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago. And so I'm continue to be shocked by how much there is still a lack of education about ovarian cancer, even in the medical field. So
Really?
the way we present is we do a factual slideshow interspersed with people telling their personal story. So I can be both the facilitator who kind of runs the show, and I can also be just there to present my personal story. And I love that format. And the audience members, or whatever, you know, the medical, nursing, pharmaceutical students and the community members that we talk to like it as well. And each person that tells their personal story, as you know from your podcast, I'm so glad you're doing it, is everybody's story is unique. There's just not a single thing that's going to point to, oh, for sure, that's ovarian cancer. So it's really important for women to know their bodies and to not wait. So it can be back pain, it can be urination changes. You could like not be able to go, or it can just come out of you, you know, without any control, and then go away and be normal. It can be the bloating like I experienced. It could be just fatigue. Could be weight gain or weight loss. It could be all the things that are symptomatic of being a woman who's aging. So,
Now, is there a screening for ovarian cancer when you go get your annual exam? I mean, I know the pap smear is for cervical cancer, but is any part of the palpation exam or anything like manual to check
nope.
for it? Wow.
No, zero. There's zero screening, which blows my mind. But you know, it's a relatively rare cancer, and I'm guessing maybe that's why it just seems like they should have come across something that can screen. Now, you may have heard of like the CA-125 blood test. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's considered a cancer marker. For ovarian cancer, some women have their, you know, CA-125, which would be a blood test, be in the very normal range, but they have ovarian cancer. And then other women can have it be the normal range is right around 35 being the maximum. And some women can have their number be in the hundreds or thousands and not have ovarian cancer. So it's really like an inflammation marker that sometimes can be linked with ovarian cancer. So when I had my blood test before surgery, my CA-125 was at 200. So now, because we know what the number was before surgery, it was down to 12 after surgery, which is normal. So now that can be a significant marker for me. Okay. So, but it's not always there, right? So that's the thing. It's like, and so to really, if it's suspected, you know, like a CT scan, internal ultrasound, these are the things that are going to show if there's something growing. And then from there, being referred to a gynecologist, oncologist is what's highly recommended, even by the ovarian cancer organizations, because the better outcomes are often tied to that. But yeah, there's no screening. So it's very, very difficult. You got to know your body. And like for me, you know, the bloating, you know, was very much a part of my life, but this was different bloating, you know, and the back pain, you know, people get back pain. but mine never went away. Like that, so you kind of have to know. I've met women that, like I said, like they had some trouble with their urinary process over the weekend, but by Monday they were fine. And they're like, yeah, I'll just go get it checked. Then their doctor's office ordered the internal ultrasound. And then that's how they were ending up diagnosed. So it's a tricky one.
Which is why it's the silent killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
So know
ignore
your
anything.
body. If anything is different, like I've talked about, like with brain cancer, people get headaches all the time, but if you get one that's different, then it's something to check. And I'm hoping at some point there will be screenings for all these that there are not, with breast cancer. Like, I don't worry about recurrence. I worry about metastasis. And breast cancer will go to your lungs, liver, brain, and bone. And there are really no screening processes for any of those.
For that, wow.
My oncologist even said, well, if you start having symptoms, I'm like, but if I start having symptoms, that means it's too late.
Something's already happening. I know.
Like, how can I do this? She's like, we really don't have anything. So it's, even with all the advances being done today, technology-wise and everything in cancer research, we still unfortunately have a long way to go.
Absolutely. I totally agree. It can be very frightening, but to me, information is power. It's better to know than to not know that there's not a screening test, and to go in and be your own fierce advocate. A lot of women are referred to like a GI doctor if they have gut issues or bloating or this kind of thing. And so it can be a while sometimes. So if you feel like it's not a GI thing, push back and say, well, can we do, an internal ultrasound? And if nothing's there, then can I go to GI or whatever? It's hard. It's so much easier said than done to be your own advocate, but it's really what needs to be done when there's no screening test.
Yeah. And I get why they don't, but there's a part of me that's like, can everybody just have a PET scan done once a year and like just scan the whole body? And I even asked about that, and it's like, well, it can find things that maybe you don't want to find, and then it opens up a whole other can of worms. And like, okay, fine. I'll just pay attention to my body.
For ovarian cancer, if you do test positive for the BRCA genes, then you will be eligible for like internal ultrasounds and different type of testing. But you have to have sort of like one or two factors that align with risk for ovarian cancer. So, that's something, that if you think you have one or two of the risk for ovarian cancer, you could go to your gynecologist and say, I want an internal ultrasound once a year or whatever, work with them to like be a little bit more proactive. But it is a very difficult disease to catch, and it's a very difficult disease to treat. But there's always hope. There's always hope. You're not a number. You're not that statistic that we all like to read up and find. No, that's not really who you are.
Well, I'm it's several months down the road. There's a long wait, but I'm finally getting genetic testing done.
Okay.
That was highly recommended. So I will be speaking about that at some point in the future. But what are your thoughts on, I guess, not preventative, but just early on, genetic testing to check and see if you have any of these markers?
Yeah, so I can provide you the website, so you can put it in a link, but there is an ovarian cancer website that you can go to, and if you qualify, you can get free genetic testing. Ooh. So you have to have, I think, one or two of the risk factors, and it's like family history, or you've had previous cancer, or endometriosis is one. Now it's a risk factor. It wasn't when I was diagnosed.
You would think that would be a given, but...
100%,
right?
100% made, but whatever. So yes, I think that, again, it depends on the individual. If you're somebody that wants to be as preventive as possible and you want to do all the things that you possibly can, then yes, I would absolutely encourage you to consider genetic testing and that kind of thing, and talk with your doctors about it. On the other hand, if you're not interested in that, that's okay too. And I really think the number one thing listed for risk factors for all cancer should be human.
Yeah.
because we get, I know I was like shocked out of my mind. Like endometriosis wasn't listed. Otherwise I would have identified with that, but I had
Mhm.
and I had sisters who were smokers and all this stuff. And I'm like, what? I'm the healthiest person around. So I was
Sometimes
really
cancer doesn't
shocked.
care, unfortunately,
It doesn't, and I think that's it's kind of a misperception. We're fed a lot of information from all different industries on how to fight disease and prevent it, and I think that's really great. But the bottom line is, to your statement just now, cancer, it does not discriminate, and they don't care how much kale you have eaten. It just doesn't. I was a kale eater. I tell cancer did not care. So
Not a kale fan myself, but to
I
me, I
don't.
grew up in the
Yeah.
80s and I was a waitress in the late 80s. Kale was a garnish, not a food. It
It was on the plate. Oh my
was on the
God, that's
plate with a
so
little
funny.
orange slice, and that was
Yeah,
the garnish to the plate. You didn't eat the garnish.
you didn't eat it. Oh, that's so
Oh my
funny.
goodness. All right, Maureen. So how can people find you if people want to get in touch with you, if they want more information about, your speaking and ovarian cancer, anything, like what's the best way for people to contact you?
Right, so you can always find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. I also have a website called MaureenSpeaks.com, so I can send that link
We'll
to
put it in
you.
the show notes.
And then you can email me as well, which is hello@MaureenSpeaks.com. So yeah, reach out if you have any questions or anything. Be happy
Awesome.
to help.
All right. And I asked all my guests this at the end of the show. If you were to meet somebody who was kind of just diagnosed or just starting on this journey or freaking out, overwhelmed, what
Hmm.
is one piece of advice that you would give to somebody kind of just starting on this journey?
I mean, it's such a tough thing. I just going to stick with my message is that please know there isn't one right way through, and that is okay to listen to that inner voice that says yes or no to whatever is being suggested, and that the most important decision comes from inside. That's really the best way to move forward. And then for anybody that's looking to support somebody that's just starting, kind of remember that too. Like it's their path and their decision, and be supportive of that instead of offering what you think might be the better thing. Yeah,
I
do
love
it your
that.
way.
Yes. The best advice, if you're not going through it, the best advice to give is none.
Right, just listen. It's so hard, to be in that empty space, if you will, but that's a powerful thing. Just I remember that so much when somebody would just sit with me and I didn't feel like talking and they just sat with me and I felt grounded and I felt more at peace and nothing had to be said. So I've experienced it both ways. I've been that kind of support for other people as well. So yeah, let's try to do the best we can to be supportive of ourselves and other people. Yeah.
I love that. And that's a perfect way to wrap this up. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's
Oh,
been a
thank
true
you.
pleasure. And I just love everything about this conversation. And it's just going to be healing for people who listen to
Oh,
it.
thank you
So
so much for having me. I enjoy this, and I'm so glad you started your podcast so we can get as many stories out there as possible.
thank you. I appreciate that. All right.
If,
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
thanks, you too.
All
Bye.
right. Bye bye.